Hello and welcome to this IsleVote21 meeting for the Isle of Wight County Council seat of Newport Central. A brief word for the benefit of the public. IsleVote21 has been formed with the sole purpose of enhancing democracy by providing an unbiased platform for candidates. We have no affiliations or funding, and no candidates are aware of what questions will be asked today, although a list of topics was distributed in advance to enable candidates to prepare. All 138 candidates in this year's election have been invited either directly or via group and party leaders. The following candidates were invited to this meeting for Newport Central: Matthew Ambrosini of the Conservative Party, Simon Haytack of the Labour Party, Stephen Rushbrook of the Green Party, and Julie Jones-Evans, an independent candidate. And so with us in attendance today, we have Stephen and Julie. And I'd just like to personally thank you so much for engaging in this exercise as we seek to better inform and engage our voters across the island. So thank you so much for joining us today. Candidates will be asked questions from our pool of questions, plus others that have been submitted by the public regarding island-wide issues. Candidates have been informed that there's a 2-minute limitation on answers, and I'll raise my hand as we approach that cutoff, and I request that candidates finish up promptly after that. Before our questions commence, candidates have 2 minutes each to give a personal statement. And I'm choosing that randomly according to how Zoom has laid us all out today. And so I'm going to ask Stephen Rushbrook for the Green Party to speak first. Thank you, Stephen.
Okay, thank you. For those that don't know me, I am Stephen Rushbrook. I recently turned 50 and live and work in the centre of Newport. I'm a senior artist at Stainless Games and originally hail from deepest, darkest Essex. I first came to the island over 20 years ago, and whilst work has dragged me elsewhere, the call of the island has always been strong. I am comfortable here. It is my home. So why am I standing for council? Because you can only sit on your sofa screaming at the TV for so long before you realize you have to step up. You have to participate. Politics-wise, where do I stand? I'm a self-confessed left-wing libertarian who also strongly feels that the nation needs a major overhaul of the electoral process. Add in a strong conviction that the global climate crisis needs to be front and center in local and global politics for the next few decades, and you have my reasons why I'm standing with the Green Party. So what would I bring to the council? While I'm not going to win anyone over with inspiring rhetoric, I have a fastidious attention to detail and a strong creative problem-solving skill set. Things essential to the realization of multi-million-pound, multi-year computer game projects with unyielding deadlines. All skills that would serve the council well in doing what a council should, improving the island for the common good with the fiscal, social, and environmental constraints and obligations therein. And that is what I would strive to do for you if elected. All I can ask is your consideration on May the 6th. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And now I'm going to hand over to Julie for her opening statement.
Thank you, Bryony. Hello, and for those who don't know me, I'm Julie Jones-Evans, brought up in Newport, went to primary school, middle school and high school here before going to London and doing my degree. Eventually came back to the Isle of Wight in 1991, and I've been here ever since. And I'm involved in business. We've got a family business in Node Hill, up St James's Street, and in fact my family's had business in Newport for the past 200 years, so well seated in the business and social life in Newport. So I've been really privileged and lucky to be able to represent Newport Central since 2009. And I've had many achievements during that time. Things like getting the residence parking zones in, which because many of our streets are clogged up with commuter parking, and it makes it very difficult for residents. Ryde and Cowes have these schemes, but Newport didn't really have any, so that's been a major win during this last 4 years. I've also done just completed a new project, the Post Office Lane's toilets, which are a brand new toilet block, which was a pretty horrid lane with unsavoury facilities. So with the community council, we have now completely upgraded those with brand new toilets. I put a map into Newport. We've got a lovely map. We work with AJ Wells. It's enamel map that's right by the Guildhall. I think my major achievement for this time has been being able to get £1.4 million of investment into the High Street, working with Historic England. I invited Historic England down when they announced this funding. I invited them down, and they actually ended up with a whole panel visit. They did a report on Newport and East Cowes and Ryde and Newport put in some fantastic bids. In fact, coming first and third in the. Anyway, we were successful in getting that money. So yeah, that's been a fantastic achievement for me this time.
Thank you so much, Julie. And I'm conscious, of course, that when I wave my hand, it makes everyone think twice, but you're welcome to finish up your thoughts after that as we go through our time together today. Thank you both for sharing your perspective and your experience. And we're going to move on now to some questions from our pool of questions. And I'm going to read each question twice to give us a bit of processing time to mull over each question. And this first one I'm going to pose to Julie first so that we can take turns going first. The first question here is, can you name a major problem that the island is facing and suggest a solution? A major problem that the island is facing, and please, can you suggest a solution? Thank you.
So, I mean, from my perspective, and from what our residents say, I think housing is one of our biggest problems that we have. Getting the right housing for the right people in the right places. At the moment, just getting a rental, they're going within one day. It's absolutely incredible, and even buying a house is more challenging. Newport, I mean, I had the figures yesterday. Newport, so the Isle of Wight is now 9th in the whole country with the turnover of properties. So it's very, very difficult. So trying to attract people to set up business or come and work on the island, and the housing that they'll need, plus the social housing that we desperately need as well. It's a massive challenge because we don't have a lot of space, do we? We need to work on our brownfield sites. I mean, for me, the Newport Central boundary has just changed. So it's gone down to Coppins Bridge, so I've got the lower High Street and I've got the lower Pyle Street. So the old Shoulder of Mutton site, probably the site you know when you come into Newport, and it's around Coppins Bridge. It's been derelict, been cleared for about 8 years now. That is it has got planning permission for housing, but there's those sorts of sites that we need to do. I was previously working on the with the Isle of Wight Council on their housing board to try and set up a housing company, which has now been achieved, but there were some problems in the Medina Avenue site about getting some housing there, just some logistics, because sometimes on brownfield sites you have there can be contamination there, so they can be more expensive. But I think this is why the council needs to take the lead, needs to take the funding that's on offer from government, and just start building, taking control and building our own housing. You know, I've got a family, one of my residents, you know, there's 6 of them in a 2-bedroom house, which is rented. She's been on the housing list for 12 years. We can't continue this way, because that's your fundamental, you know, your sort of the theory of hierarchy. You know, your housing, where you are, where you spend your time, is about your well-being, isn't it? So yeah, it's the jobs and the housing. So housing for me has got to be the number one.
Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you. Over to you, Stephen. A major problem that the island's facing and a possible solution.
Well, housing is a strong one, but as we come out of lockdown and COVID restrictions, the realities of the transport issue and on the island is going to become apparent as more cars hit the roads again. And when it comes to traffic, then, sorry to be the first one to bring it up, but floating bridge number 6 is a huge, literal bottleneck to the entire island. It's important for Cowes and East Cowes and all that area, but the amount of traffic pushes into Newport is going to be a trouble. We also have to look at public transport. Whilst I do acknowledge that the entities who run these services are profit-seeking entities, they have to be first and foremost aware that they are running a public service, and that service has to serve the people of which they make their profit. It needs, the buses and the ferries need to be able to get people to their jobs in the morning, needs to get them home from their jobs in the evening, needs to get them into town for evening frivolities and home again after the concert and not halfway through. Yeah, transport, we need to sort that out. We need to make sure that the profit-seeking entities that run it run a service that supports the people before they attend to their profits.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to our next question now, and I'm going to ask Stephen if you'd be happy to take the first answer. The question is, what relevant experience would you bring to the role, and what have you achieved in communities in the past? What relevant experience do you bring, and what have you achieved in communities in the past?
Well, as I said in my opening, I'm used to finding creative solutions to problems, and I have a fastidious attention to detail. I like graphing and making data and following the numbers and actually looking and finding where the problem is and suggesting solutions. Community-wise, I haven't really engaged too heavily because before now I've never really felt the need to stand up, but I have, yeah. I'm a newbie, but I'm confident I can actually do well and do good by the community. I don't have the experience of Julie, but there you go.
Lovely, thank you, Stephen. Thanks very much. Over to you, Julie. Experience and what you've achieved in communities in the past.
Thank you. So I started in 2007 when the Isle of Wight Council shut off Chapel Street, which was a major problem in the centre of Newport, and it badly affected a whole community and business community. So I just started campaigning, and then that started my journey on being on the council. I thought, if I've got to try and change something, I've got to be inside and try and change it from the inside. So that's how I began. So for me, it was really important to be on the Newport Parish Council, as it was then, and which is now called Newport and Calvert Community Council, because working with your budget and you being right on the ground with that council, and you work then hand in hand with the Isle of Wight Council. So we've done loads and loads of projects for the community. Things like we've taken over the recs, the allotments. We've obviously taken over the public toilets as well. So those are three main things we've done for the community. It's the other thing I'm really proud of is starting Shaping Newport, which is a conversation basically that created a place plan for Newport, because I was really concerned that once they announced the big harbour development, that the centre of Newport would be left behind, because Newport, you know, it's always had this, Newport be okay, or just get on with it itself. People have to come to Newport. We can use it as a cash cow for parking and just basically just let it fend for itself. But you know, that doesn't work these days. So the place plan was to really ask the people who work and live in Newport what they think of their place. So that was a combination of the Community Council and the Business Association and the Isle of Wight Council. I brought these parties together, and we now have a place plan which we are working and delivering different projects on. So that's fantastic, because that's from the grassroots up. It's not being dictated to from above, which means that we can now influence the harbour regeneration as well. I could tell you loads more things, because obviously we've been quite busy in the last 12 years. But you know, that's why I think it's really important that people do get involved with the Community Council. Unfortunately, I was the only candidate that stood up for the Community Council from the Isle of Wight Council applicants this year. But I'm excited about the next. I've already been. Sorry, I just say I've actually been elected on a post for the Community Council. I can continue that work now for the next 4 years. So that's good news. Along with IsleVote21, another Newport resident and Green Party member.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you. Okay, Julie, I'm going to ask you to take the lead on our next question, and I'll read it twice. How can residents become more confident and engaged with the council's decision-making process? How can residents become more confident and engaged with the council's decision-making processes?
Come to meetings, ask questions. You know, there are all these meetings are held, they're not public meetings, but they're meetings that are held in public. There's plenty of opportunity to write in a question, which you then will get a written answer if you can't be there. But once we're getting back to public meetings held in public, you know, physical meetings, which will be from May, you know, we've got a county hall, there's the gallery there, you can come along, you can just observe. And then contact your local member and have a meeting with them. You know, a telephone call, or I'll meet quite often residents down at the quay as well, and just talk through. So I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what the council does, what it can do, what it can't do. So I think it's really important to have that understanding. Yesterday I was out delivering my leaflets, and someone asked me, "Oh, so Julie, so you earn £100,000 a year, do you?" And I had to chuckle, but it's like, no, that's the chief executive. I'm a member. You know, I'm a working person. It's a normal working person, and we get an allowance. I think it's about between like just under £8,000 our allowance a year, which is to cover, you know, our time off work, etc. So I think it's a misconception. So I think it's a whole sort of understanding that needs to be done. We get our council tax bill, but we don't really necessarily know what that goes on, you know, how much we have to spend on adult social care, for instance, which is, because we're a unitary authority, we're like a little country of our own. And so I think people, yeah, they can engage. And I do get frustrated, even at the community council, with people don't come. I'm like, come, let us know what you want to, you know. Otherwise, you don't want me keep going on at you and asking you and knocking on doors, which you can't do at the moment anyway. But you know, so it's a two-way street. I mean, I have my contact details out there, but yeah, the main thing is, yeah, come along to meetings, ask questions, even if you think they're silly questions. There's no such thing as a silly question. Just ask, get engaged. Don't be afraid.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you. Over to you, Stephen. How can residents become more confident and engaged with the council's decision-making processes?
Well, Julie is right on the money there. You've got to stand up, you've got to participate, you've got to come along to the meetings, you've got to talk to your representatives, you've got to let them know your concerns and your issues, and then of course follow the process and then judge the results. That's how you build up confidence in your councillor, your representative at all council levels, or all representational levels across the island. You've got to stand up, you've got to participate, you've got to engage in the political process. And in that way, you can actually build up an understanding of it and faith in it. Participate, join in, talk to your representative, and judge them on their actions. That's all there is to it. Stand up and participate.
Thank you, Stephen. Certainly, it sounds like we are all looking to develop the communication that we have between residents across the island and the council and the decision-making process, and being more engaged and informed. It's great to hear from you both. Okay, we're going to move on to public questions now. And I'm going to ask Stephen this first one. The question is, what can be done to improve educational aspiration for residents of all ages? What can be done to improve educational aspiration for residents of all ages?
First and foremost, make sure that the opportunities are there for all those that want and need them, both at education of young people, but of course, so lifelong learning. Men in Sheds program is, a glorious example of this, for fostering curiosity and learning and expanding of skills in older and more senior people. It's called Men in Sheds, but I don't hold to the fact that it should be sidelined to any particular gender or sex, but yeah, just provide the opportunities and share stories when and how it works. And if it doesn't work, fix it. Make sure that those who need information technology to further their education can have it. Therefore, they will feel better about participating in it and can actually reach further in those aspirations. As any council should do, it's about supporting and giving opportunities to those in the community. And if people see the opportunities are there and can see the benefits of those opportunities, then they'll be likely to take them on. I don't think I have any more on that one.
Just as I was about to wave my hand at you as well, Stephen. Thank you very much. Okay, over to you, Julie. What can be done to improve educational aspiration for residents of all ages?
Thank you. And when you talk about aspiration, that means that people don't have great aspiration about themselves, don't feel good about themselves. And we have had some, well-being studies done on the Isle of Wight, and actually people do generally feel quite good about themselves. But we do have huge pockets of deprivation on the Isle of Wight and child poverty, and we know because history's told us and figures tell us that if you are in poverty and you're on free school meals and stuff, that your trajectory for your education long term is diminished somewhat. So I think that's one of the things we've got to tackle is the childhood the poverty levels on the island. And we talk about it, but nothing ever seems to be done about it. Our early years on the Isle of Wight is actually quite good, but it all seems to sort of go awry, and when they go up to sort of like when they're sort of like 11, 12. And I think we're suffering from a sort of a hangover because of the school's reorganisation, which at the time seemed to be the right thing to do. But my son went through it. He suffered really going from the extra years at primary school, and there wasn't enough room for them, and then having to go up to a big, huge school at Christ the King with over about 1,200 people there, and you kind of get lost in the system. And I actually home educated him for a while, and we actually have a massive amount of per capita home education on the island. So something awry, and also our SEN provision needs to be improved as well. So we really got to look at people that are sort of disadvantaged and raising their aspirations, but giving them like Steve says, the equipment they need, but also the support they need in school. So everyone's got to come up. We can't just have the cream of the crop doing well. That's no good to society. We all need to be doing well, and all born equal, and all born with our own talents and skills that they need to be nurtured at school. They need to have your vocational as well as your academic.
Thank you very much, Julie and Stephen. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to our next question. I'm going to pose this one to Julie first. The question is, how would you work to encourage less reliance on motor vehicles and develop more sustainable methods of transport? How would you work to encourage less reliance on motor vehicles and develop more sustainable methods of transport?
Well, happy to say I'm already working on this. Back in 2013, I started my 20-mile-per-hour project because Newport Central, when people are coming through during the daytime, they go, oh, how can if everyone's going about 10 miles an hour, but Stephen will know, at night time it can be a complete nightmare with people rushing around. It's very noisy, and can be quite unpleasant at times as well. And from that, I had some project money I built up with the community council, and I had an audit done of the whole of Newport town centre. So we knew where our pavements were narrow, where there weren't drop curbs, for instance, because all these things really do impinge on the pedestrian experience. So we've got a project called the People First Zone. So we're widening pavements, we're improving things like the drop curbs, so to make it just more pleasant to go around. So you don't have to think you've got to drive in. I also work with Southern Vectis. We're all going for a car-free day in September. We're joining the National Car-Free Day, so working on that at the moment. I lobby all the time to get better cycling provision. So with the St Mary's scheme, I went hoarse trying to telling the cabinet member and the project manager we have to have some cycling links in here now, because it's a major piece of infrastructure, yet that is completely it's devoid of any cycling interaction, and that would have been a great corridor to come through there. I also a member of Cycle Wight. I'm on the committee of Cycle Wight to improve that. But for me, a lot of my residents in Newport, they just find it hard to get around, because you've got narrow pavements. I've got my residents that just are scared of the amount of traffic there is. So it's really, really important that we get some of the traffic out of town. That's a much bigger thing to do, but we are working on that with the new person who's the head of highways. So I've got a project we're working on with them.
Thank you, Julie. Over to you, Stephen. Encouraging less reliance on motor vehicles and developing more sustainable methods of transport.
Well, yeah, traffic can get crazy, especially, and I've mentioned it before, Floating Bridge being out most of the time. In 2019, the traffic jams and the gridlock in Newport was frequent and horrific. We need to instill more confidence in our public transport system. We need to encourage people to use the buses more, which will keep traffic out of the town centres. We need to encourage electric vehicles. Just bringing the green message a little bit there. We need to encourage active travelling, that is walking and cycling. For that, we need decent cycle paths and walking paths that are separate where possible from the roads because of the scary traffic issue. We need to, on the buses again, we need to keep on with Southern Vectors about providing a decent workable bus service and providing community buses where they are unwilling to do so that people have access to public transport, which means less reliance on private motor vehicles. And park and ride, additional park and ride opportunities so that cars don't enter the town centre. I mean, I will and study up more on this, but that's just my thoughts off the top of my head.
Great, thank you, Stephen. Thank you both. Okay, I have a question to start with you, Stephen, from the public. We've had many questions pertaining to cross-Solent travel links, ferries, reliability, costs. How would you address existing concerns, and do you have a vision for improved connectivity?
Well, here we go. First up, it's very much the same situation as our buses. We need the service providers to understand that they are providing a service that should be focused on the needs of the islanders and the mainlanders coming across, rather than their profits. I know that they are profit-seeking organizations, but they need to provide a workable service. I don't know how you do that. It's a problem that needs to be solved, most definitely. The other major cross-Solent thing that gets mentioned is the possibility of a fixed link. I'm personally against it. But there has yet to be a significant inquest study into it that covers all of the impacts, and I don't think anything on that can move forward before that happens. Yeah, that's all I have on that one.
Great, thank you, Stephen. Julie, how would you address existing concerns, and do you have a vision for improved connectivity?
Thank you. I mean, it's the perennial topic on the Isle of Wight, isn't it? The ferries and our connectivity to the mainland. And I don't know if you know, but back in, I think it was like 1913, 14, they're actually building a rail link out from Yarmouth, which got stopped by the First World War. But I often wonder what that would have made, that with the rail connectivity, with getting freight off and being people off without bringing vehicles. I can never see that we'd have a bridge across the Isle of Wight. I just don't see how that's feasible. And Stephen said, you know, you have to have a proper feasibility study done before you could really balance the pros and cons of such a you know, a massive piece of infrastructure. But I think we just need to bite the bullet. The government needs to subsidise our ferries. You know, in Scotland they get on very well because they have a completely different funding formula for their ferries, and they have many islands. And I can't see any other way out of it. You know, then there's some subsidisation or nationalisation, preferably, of our links, because it's our lifeline. I've not been off the island since May last year, which I know is because we've got the pandemic. But even then, my dad lives in Wales, and I only get to see him like 3 times a year, which is quite devastating because I just can't afford to take the car off the island and go visit him when I want to. So I think we should just be, because we have our levels of poverty, and you know, we stand out in the southeast as you know, having lower incomes, you know, health outcomes, education outcomes. You know, we need to have this boost, this connectivity, so we can, you know, maybe work on the island, or people with skills can come and work here without, you know, having to live here necessarily. So the connectivity is absolutely everything. You know, it's communication, isn't it, as well? And I know we've got our gigabyte island, which is great, which means we can work virtually, but we need to be able to physically get off when we need to.
Great, thank you both. Thank you. Okay, Julie, I'm going to hand over to you for our next question, which we received many questions on the subject of housing. There's a need for homes on the island to address a shortage of housing that matches the local situation, especially for those looking to rent. But an environmental cost comes with every new house built in terms of losing green space, the required infrastructure, and so on. How should the council, within the bounds of its powers, seek to create more homes for islanders whilst balancing the environmental costs of more building? How should the council, within the bounds of its powers, seek to create more homes for islanders whilst balancing the environmental costs of more building?
Thank you. I've already sort of gone on about housing a bit, but yeah, the Isle of Wight Council has the power to become, you know, to be a builder and to take the hit financially, because what they're getting, they're providing the homes that are needed for people, and in the long term, you're probably actually saving money because you're not having to put people up in bed and breakfast. So talking about that level of people which are in desperate needs of homes and living in you know, circumstances that aren't beneficial to one's well-being. So you can take a direct lead on that, you know, working with other housing associations as well, which we do. But I think taking that lead and taking the hit is really, really important. Looking at the brownfield sites, looking at different ways of living. I mean, I'm really interested in the co-living model at the moment, and there's community housing as well, where people can live in a slightly different way, where they have smaller houses, maybe clustered around, and they have a joint communal area as well, and they share tools, they share vehicles. So there's that kind of model that's really, really interesting as well. So it doesn't have to be, you know, the Barratt housing development. We see these rabbit hutches going up, which you know, some are great, but you know, do they have the longevity of a lovely Victorian terrace house? You know, I'm not so sure. Balancing the sustainability, we have to, but we also need to think about what do we want the island to be like, and can we stand still? You know, do we want to go backward? I don't think so. But we need to have the right house for the right people. So encourage people to downsize, so the bigger houses then become available for families that are growing. Really got to get a grip on our housing list though, because that just grows each year. So I think just really have a good look. I know we literally just had a call in for brownfield sites at the Isle of Wight Council, but there might need to be some, you know, edge of they call them sort of not edge of town sort of developments as well. But you just have to have a cold-hearted look at what we've got, what opportunities we've got, and who we are building for, having an understanding what that is.
Thanks, Julie. Over to you, Stephen. How should the council, within the bounds of its powers, seek to create more homes for islanders whilst balancing the environmental costs of more building?
Thank you. I'm personally against inappropriate large-scale housing developments, just taking over vast tracts of greenfield and putting up countless number of houses and stuff like that, which frequently are out of the price range of many of the island residents, especially lower income, especially those on benefits. They have nowhere to go. They get bought by people seeking to rent, and then the rental prices are also out of the price range of many of the local communities seeking to even get their first rung on the housing ladder. Building community housing, building, I'll use the word council housing, building council built and owned properties for rental, at low cost rental for people, and for people who can't even afford that. Just making sure that the housing needs serve what the community needs and can afford. Of course, setting out rules that any new builds are built to modern environmental standards for energy consumption, energy loss prevention, and ecologically ethical material usage is important, especially coming from the Green Party. And any buildings that are brought for sale to be brought up to, where possible, those new standards. And that's it.
Thanks very much, Stephen. Thank you both. Okay, we're going to move on to our last question, really thinking about your local ward before we then move on to closing statements. And Stephen, I'm going to pass the floor over to you for our last question, which is, knowing your local community as you do, what local issue would you like to address that you know is of concern to residents? Knowing your community as you do, what local issues would you like to address that you know is of concern to residents?
Well, town centre regeneration is on everyone's lips right now. What with Brexit, the reality of Brexit biting, and of course being locked down for the entirety of last year, we have seen a rapid decline in the number of shops and retail and use of the town centre. A fair bit of that was happening before lockdown, but Brexit and the lockdown has just exacerbated that, with many of national brands clearing out of the high street. And we need to look at ways of regenerating the town centre, not ignoring retail, which will change due to the national changes and all of that, but also looking how we can bring it more into a community-focused hub. The news that the NHS has purchased the old HMV site, and that is going to be a mental health hub in the centre of Newport, is a good and important step to that. But we also need to look at the other open empty spaces and find better ways of using them that can actually promote and benefit the island community and island producers. I have a crazy notion of finding a way of returning a covered market to Newport Town Centre so that local producers can bring their produce to the town centre for everyone's use.
Thank you, Stephen. Over to you, Julie. What local issue would you like to address that you know is of concern to residents?
So the big topic conversation within the whole town centre regeneration, as Stephen's already picked up on, is having a post office. It's been a massive blow with the post office going, and this actually goes back to a government decision back in sort of 2010, 11, when it was privatised. So. And the business model changed. So actually, it's very unattractive to take a post office on. It's very difficult to actually earn the money. So I've been working with the post office and the co-op since November to try and get a solution to this. We're at the stage now that no one's come forward, but we are looking. But they now have conceded they will consider 2 or 3 smaller sub post offices in Newport. So that could probably fit in more easily into an existing business. So I'm confident that using this model, so in a way it might be easier because you'll have them dotted around the town rather than being in one location. So that's probably the big topic conversation. Getting the amount of vehicles out of the town is really important, just because of the fumes and the way it just makes it unattractive and noisy to move about. It's the county town and we need to be proud of it. Markets, as Stephen's picked up on as well, we know we are the market town. We've had our charter since the 12th century, so this is something that we're building on our heritage, which we're doing with the High Street Heritage Action Zone. And I was just having a conversation yesterday about Stephen's just the idea he said about taking over one of the larger empty properties and putting market stalls in there, maybe some food courts as well. So that's something that I'm hoping we're going to can use some of the welcome back funding to do. So quite excited about that. But it's not all doom and gloom. You know, we have a fantastic independent sector in Newport. You go down Holyrood Street, there's not one empty shop there. I get pretty sort of myth when people go, oh, Newport's dead, it's dreadful, look at it. Well, actually no, there's some fantastic things happening and new businesses are opening up all the time. There's some big empty shops we need to address, and we've got some good news arrived yesterday and coming on that, so watch this space.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you both. Okay, I really appreciate you answering our many varied questions today. And I'm going to invite each of you to now take a couple minutes to give a closing statement and or reflect on today's process. And I'm going to hand over to you, Julie, first. Thank you.
Firstly, it's been really a great opportunity, and I know that I said I was going to keep my answers short and sweet, but you know, some meaty topics there and really important topics to the whole island. I think that's the thing for to be an Isle of Wight councillor, is that balancing the macro and the micro, you know, what's going on in your area. We're looking at the bigger topics as well, and I've not shied away from these big topics. You know, I sit on the Isle of Wight Chamber of Commerce board, so I do, and the Economic Development board. So I am talking all the time about business development, about education and housing, all these things that kind of make the rich fabric of our island. And the island is a fantastic place to live. You know, we know that it's beautiful. It's just charming, and I just feel so lucky that I live here. But you know, we have to look at our issues and look them straight in the face and come up with some solutions to really tackle them. You know, what the biggest frustration for me is the fact that, you know, we're still £6.1 million short each year on just running the local authority. You know, it's like we've got one hand behind our back the whole time, just trying to deliver services. And it's great that government give us money, but I'd much rather had a proper budget, so we're on a level playing field with every other authority. Then we can make decisions about how we spend our money, rather than say, oh, here's a bit of money to do that bit of work or that bit of work. It's like being hungry and starving, but you're not given the right nutrients. You know, you are giving some nutrients, so you can just about get by, but not really being satisfied, I guess. So I'd love to be able to continue representing Newport Central as I have done for the last 12 years. I love my town, and I'm really proud of the work I've done to date. So I'd like to continue in that vein. So thank you again, and lovely to talk to you at long last, Stephen.
Thank you, Julie. Over to you, Stephen, for your closing statement.
Oh, thank you. As I believe I've talked a fair bit about these topics and stuff like that, and I'd like to actually, in closing, I wish to address the framing of these elections by the Tories. In the leaflets they have been delivering across the island, they are errantly trying to frame this contest as Conservative or Labour, because only those parties theoretically can form a majority at County Hall. This is exceptionally telling. They are saying that having a majority is the only thing that matters, and by that they mean their majority. They know after 10 years of brutal cuts, the reality of Brexit sinking in, and the utter mismanagement of the COVID crisis by the Tories, the anti-Tory sentiment here and on the Big Island is incredibly high right now. They know that in local elections, independents like Julie and the Greens tend to do exceptionally well. And because of that, they're doing all they can to discourage voters from even thinking about the independents or the Greens. They're framing this as all about winning 21 seats. It's not about 21 seats, it's about 5. The 5 seats it would take to dislodge the Tory chokehold on County Hall. Only 5 seats. And in this political climate, they could easily be taken by the Greens, by the Independents, or indeed Labour, all of whom have more in common with each other than the Tories and would work together for the island. I urge you not to fall for this Tory subterfuge. I urge you to get out there and vote for the strongest non-Tory candidate in your ward. And above all, I urge you to get out and vote. You have to stand up. You have to participate. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Stephen Rushbrook and Julie Jones-Evans, for joining me today, taking part in this conversation and supporting our voters and residents across the island to be more informed and engaged. I really appreciate your time. Thank you both.